Australian Olympian Benn Harradine. Ben, welcome to Throws Talk, and thanks for giving up your time today.
No worries.
So you're over here on a training camp in the US, but home for you now is in Sweden. So tell us about that, and how did that come about for you?
I made the move after I've been back and forth from Sweden for quite a while, but home's always been Australia. But for the first time I've committed to being over there 100%, and part of that decision came with a job opportunity, and that job opportunity is the director of sport in one of Sweden's largest track and field clubs. Has its challenges, but it's a fantastic job. I love the sport of track and field, and having the opportunity to work in it in a leadership role is something that I've always dreamed for.
Nice. And you've also had a lot of experience in Germany. I know you spent a lot of time over there. You worked with Juergen Schult as your coach. So how was that? That was an interesting time. Absolutely.
I love Germany for many good reasons. I think I learned a lot about my personal self more than anything. In Australia, you know, it's a small country, and well, small country in terms of throwing, but or track and field. But being in Germany, I went from being a big fish in a small pond to being a tiny fish in a very big pond. A lot of depth, lots of research, and you know, all that know-how and trial and error that they have done for so many years. I was able to learn some insights into that, develop a lot of trust with coaches, talk and learn, and it was a fantastic time for discovery.
And Juergen Schult, of course, still world record holder in the discus, but is the national throws coach, coordinator there. But he was your personal coach for a while. What did you gain from that experience working with him?
Many different lessons. A lot from life and challenging myself. I think a lot of people talk about mastery of throwing, but from him I learned that there is no real mastery, because if we seek that, we're never, you know, you become satisfied to a point. And I think that's part of the reason why I still continue with track and field, is because there's always something new to learn with technique. No matter how you adjust with your age and your abilities to move and so forth. And Juergen was a big believer in teaching me that, you know, try things for yourself and learn for yourself. Be an independent learner. I've always been that, but he really reinstated that in me. Some things I had to learn the hard way. They're very disciplined, very meticulous with detail. I'm very much an innovative person. I like to trial new things, new gizmos and so forth, and unless it's been researched, as you understand, in Germany they're not too keen on that idea. But that was always a passion that I had. But it's hard to sum up in a sentence or a few sentences what I learned from Juergen. But what I really appreciated the most is when I wrote him that initial contact and asked him if I could come and do some work. He could have said no. But I went from a guy in Australia who idolised a man and watched many VHS tapes of him throwing, to staying in his apartment at the time, and then started a lifelong friendship and a great journey together.
Good. And going back, Australia, as you said, is a large country geographically. It's a long way from the normal track and field universe of Europe and maybe USA. You're a little more isolated there. So how was that as an experience growing up, wanting to be a track and field athlete?
Very tricky. We have so much competition for people who are large, like us guys. You know, it's much easier to go to rugby league, rugby union, AFL, and make a bunch of money. But for me, I tried team sports initially, and it wasn't something that I really enjoyed. I like to be able to be totally responsible for myself and own my own journey. And throwing in Australia, or track and field in Australia, although very small, we were lucky in the fact that we were able to see athletics on TV when I was growing up, and from that we could see what was possible. So that kind of helped in my decision making. But basically my decision process was, I want to be an Olympian. I don't care what sport it is. But I found something that I really loved at 18 and 19 years old, and I really wanted to pursue that, and I was fortunate enough to have a family that supported that, and the journey began from that, I guess. But it's challenging coming from Australia because, as you say, we are so far away. It's a long way to get competition. We come to the US first, obviously, and then Europe is kind of like the creme de la creme of track and field, as you would say. But not everyone has that will to go to Europe or understanding of what's out there or the contacts.
Yeah.
So I was willing to dive into that maze, and I'm very happy I did.
And also geographically, it's a long way away, but also you have a different season. Your season is January through till March, and you know that's usually your qualification period for championships in August. So that in itself brings challenges.
Absolutely. The double periodization was something that my now coach Dad, or Ken, has been. He's always said that it's so hard to double peak in a year, and obviously that becomes more apparent the older you get and the higher the level you need. But you know, to be up for nationals and then be up again 3 or 4 months later, it's not easy. And I think a trap that a lot of Australian people can get into is that they're so great at our national titles in March, but they don't carry that form into a championships. So they go to the championships and they underperform, as our federation likes to call it. But they don't do as well as they potentially could. But I think now there's a shift and people are starting to realise that maybe it's not so important that we place all of our hopes on national titles and more on being competitive on the world stage.
And I know you're a very proud Australian, but also proud of your heritage, Aboriginal heritage as well. That's always been important for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a long story short, you know, my dad, his father died when he was 2, and we never really had that connection with his side of the family. And he'd always thought that was where he belonged, but he never had the piece of paper to say that was where he came from. And in his time also it was something very frowned upon. You know, people shouldn't be proud to calling themselves Indigenous, especially if they're married to a white woman, which his father was. And so when his father passed away, it was totally cut that connection with the Indigenous side, and we lost it. So for him, he had to discover his family later in his life, 50 years old, so he grew up not really knowing where he belonged. And it was always something that he put into us, is to, if family is the most important thing. And I think that's evident in my personality also. I enjoy a lot of that journey with my dad, and my family are very close to me. But learning about Indigenous heritage was hugely eye-opening, in the fact that in, I guess, white culture, where we say in Australia, family is extended to cousins and so forth. But when you talk about Indigenous family, it's huge. Like, I can call up someone who's 3-4 times removed from me, and they still call me brother, and I still have a spot at their table or a place in their house. Or it's just such a fantastically strong culture to be a part of. So.
And that was also important for you. I know you said you wanted to be an Olympian in something, and you've 3 or 4 Olympics, is it? 3?
Yeah.
3. So, you know, that must be also a very proud moment for your family.
Absolutely. It started with them, and they were there from 100% from the start. They never wavered in their support, and I believe that you don't do that anyway, but not everyone is fortunate enough to have a family like that. So I'm very vocal in the fact that I want people to know that my family, my parents have been the driving force behind my career from the start, and hopefully all the way to the end. I know they will be. And that's been incredibly uplifting, and a strength that I've always taken with me to competitions. And something that Dad said to me before Rio, you know, we struggled all year to get back into some form of shape. You know, we knew that it was going to have to require a miracle to do well, because my body just didn't want to come with me. But he said, you know, like, if you're a nothing before you have a medal, you're still going to be a nothing without it. I know it's not cool runnings, but that's exactly the attitude that we have. All about the character first, and then if you happen to be rewarded for your success, well then even better.
And your dad, Ken, is your coach and quite a character himself. Ops. He's well known amongst the throwing community, usually for flipping people off, and his pictures that you post on your media, your social media. He's how's he been? He's travelled from Australia to meet you here in the US, meet halfway, as it were.
Absolutely. Dad's 75 now, going on 75. So I think, funnily enough, he's getting better with the travel as he gets older. I knocked him around a lot more when he was still working, but now he has the ability to be retired. Has a little bit more manoeuvrability, but you know, one great thing about Juergen was that he was so liberal in his information. So Dad came over with me to Germany, and he asked 1,000 questions. And Juergen helped Dad to solidify a lot of the ideas that he always thought were correct.
Right.
But he needed a sounding board to have a mentor to have that.
Yeah.
And he was never ever secretive with his knowledge. If someone had the ability to ask Juergen, he was always willing to give his opinion.
Yes.
And it's not gospel, and he knows that. But you know, Dad was never backwards in coming forwards, and he still isn't, as you know. Yeah. And he asked questions, and so he was able to learn a lot, and then help me learn a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of concepts that we've together as a team put together, you know, even Juergen has taken on board.
Yes.
So it's been a matter of sharing in that sense. But yeah, Dad came over here to the US and met me halfway. He hasn't seen me throw since Rio. I've been doing a lot of stuff in the net and also juggling full-time work. But I think both of us probably had higher expectations because being in Australia, throwing outdoors all year, you know, you have that, you're spoiled a little bit.
Yeah.
So I've been in the nets and you just don't see it fly. It's a totally different rhythm, and coming straight over here to the US and probably expecting a little bit more than what I was able to deliver was a bit of a, not an eye-opener, but just a reality check that, you know, we need to really be a bit more meticulous with the details and give ourselves time to follow the process through.
And this last couple of years has kind of been a rebuilding year for you, like actually physically, because of some serious injuries you had with your knee and stuff like that. How's that been? How's your body feeling now, getting back to?
Funnily enough, you know, my body feels great, except for my elbow. You know, I'm having a lot of trouble getting out to full extension. Doesn't like that whipping motion much at the moment, but I think it's something that we can overcome. Being that we're training smarter and smarter, finding ways to still get load, but not in a crazy sense. But you know, I feel really good in my body. I feel fantastic in my lifting. My numbers are much better than they were last year in the lead up to Rio. But unfortunately, like, that doesn't always equate to long throws. You know, many strong people have never been able to produce long throws. But I really need the time in the ring.
But you've never been a big one for heavy weights anyway, right? You're much more about specific strength, and I see you working your exercises over here. That's always been a big part of your preparation. Yeah,
my philosophy has, well, I started late, and that's probably the reason why I have kind of a few injuries in the last 3 years, is that I never became, well, I was an athlete first, but then I got into that grind of lift heavy and put on weight and throw heaps, and it didn't do my body any favours. And when I got to Germany, I was exposed. I was like, okay, this is what I'm lacking. And instead of going and saying, okay, let's make everything that you're weak at better, find my strengths, help them improve, and then slowly increase the weaknesses. But then that saw me bloom a little later in terms of, you know, 28, 29, I was throwing some of my best results. And I'm paying the price a little bit for adjusting my training. But I've always been a big believer in athleticism.
And how is that in Germany? You know, obviously Germany from a discus perspective is the leading nation, has been for many years, and they keep producing top guys, and you get rid of one Harting brother and another one comes along, like buses. But you know, what do you see, what have you noticed in being around them in terms of comparing their preparation and training to what you see here in the USA or other parts of Europe?
I'd say patience is probably the thing, that they see a project of an athlete as a 10-year investment. You know, slow building up and not pushing it too fast. Let's take Stoll, for example. You know, he's a guy who won, what did he win, every juniors that went along. And I remember in Keenbum, I was watching him and he was benching like 170, 180. I thought this guy could bench 250. But I was speaking to Sven, his coach, afterwards, and he's like, what's the point? We're interested in slowly, long-dated development process, taking care of the body and making sure he can continue to develop the whole way. And straight away, it made complete sense to me. I was like, for me, that's a good coach, is to recognize that although he could probably be pushing the limits, which most people want, you know, most testosterone-fueled men and women, or to less extent women, of course, but we want to push ourselves, and if it's not in the circle, it's in the weight room and so forth, which is great, but being guided by the right person is very important. But in terms of athleticism, I got there, and you know, I've been having my backside handed to me by kids who were 17 doing overheads and forwards, sprinting super fast. I remember I talked to you a lot about Gordon, unbelievably fast. Was knocking off Riedel, a lot of his old records. Great standing longs, like they're just great athletes. Unfortunately, he didn't continue. But when I see the likes of Jasinski and Harding brothers and God, who else is there? Marcus, Vierig, they're just great athletes. Give them anything to do.
And they tend to look for this 6'7", tall, skinny, athletic, and take their time in developing them. And their technique is also kind of built around that. You know, it's that long levers and using that very flexible technique. So yeah, and the strength numbers, while they're good, they're not probably outstanding.
No, like I mean, my best bench is 225, and the same year I threw 68 meters. But then again, the following year I benched 180 and I still threw 67. So, I mean, I could have maybe focused more on lifting and bench 260, but for me, I didn't get a lot out of. I couldn't recruit that into the circle, and that was a big part of like Juergen's philosophy. Is that if you can't use it, if it's not fast, it has to be. Schnelligkeit is important, like the speed of the movement and the intent to do everything related to the circle. But as I say, like I don't hold the German method as gospel. It's a part of my life that I'm happy that I learned from, but I'm always keeping an open mind to. Like Vestine has a lot of great concepts, and so do many other coaches. But it's important that I think it's not to get fixated on one idea. Take bits and pieces.
You mentioned Juergen as being one of your idols. Who are the other people that you respect and have followed over the years and look to learn from?
I respect anyone who is able to put down this time and see it through and be successful in their own way. To less extent, those who take shortcuts. But I think that if we're going to name names, I'd have to say Alekna. His ability just to keep getting better. Guy's like a fine wine. I'm sure he could probably throw 66 if he put down 6 months. Fantastic athlete in the throwing. Gerd was also, still is, able to continue through his years. I love Wolfgang for his technique. It's hard to Lars to some extent in his strength at World Championship level. Jesus, so in discus there's so many to choose from, but those are the standouts for me: the Alekna, Schult, Wolfgang, and then of course Robert. Like I've grown to learn and understand a lot more about Robert in the last probably 18 months. He's been more open,
much more,
and great chats. Really fantastic conversation. Insights into his just a little bit of how he thinks. And his creativity in the circle and the way he's thinking of always improving his training. I think there's a lot to say about him opening up now as an athlete and being a little bit more, much more approachable. Great guy.
You've also, in your time spent in Germany, you got to experience some of the great competitions over there as well, which the rest of the world just probably doesn't understand. The magic of a Halle or a Wiesbaden or some of the other little discus comps and stuff. Give us your view of some of those competitions that you were able to take part in.
Halle would probably be one of my favourites. I love Wiesbaden, Halle. I've done Schöneberg, I've done Bad Kustritz. And who wouldn't want to be interested in eating sausages and sitting around and having a beverage and watching big men and women, supreme athletes, smashing discuses and making a lot of noise. It gives also people, I think, the chance to be close, to feel the tension of the competition and see the excitement, but also witness the raw size of people. Because like you can see them on the TV, and I don't have to tell you about this, but no, you don't really put it in perspective until you're there and you see, oh gee, there goes a 70-meter throw. Like it looks huge. But we thrive off that as well. I think the year that I wore the Bavarian suit in Halle was probably one of the strongest competitions I've ever been a part of. think 66 metres with 8th place. Unheard of. Such depth in discus throwing, and an amazing competition to be a part of. I could have come 8th in that and wouldn't care. I think I came 6th, but it was just, you know, like I took off the suit and the crowd just went crazy. And those moments we live for, because we don't really get that at the bigger meets.
But it's also great that there's also an age group competition. The juniors are there, the under 16s are there. You've got all of these people coming in, and you get international young athletes coming in as well, because that's just so good for the sport in general.
2 whole days of throwing, just throwing. What could be better for us?
Right, exactly.
And it's a great promo for sport too, right?
Yeah, I just wish it got out to a bigger field, because that's the trouble. You know, we need to promote our sport, and that is one of the great environments to do that in. You know, more people need to see that and experience it.
Yeah. So. And it's not very difficult, you know, like. It's just a matter of someone taking the time, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but you just have to take the sport to the people a little bit, educate them. You know, like some stats like, here's a guy, you know, Robert walks into the circle, his release speed is 16 metres per second, and that's why he was able to produce 70 metres, and he's also 120 kilos and benches this and, you know, this and that, and he can produce this amount of power, which is relatable to like 2 V8 cars, or, you know, put it into a language that the consumer can understand.
But also the city itself in Halle, the Friends of Halle are the group that run the meeting. They're just a bunch of people from the city that all give their time, they're voluntary, and raise money to put on that event. It's just incredible. And
I think a lot of throwers would go there for free. And the prize pot is not huge, but that's not why people go there. They go there because, 1, there's fierce competition, and 2, it's an amazing atmosphere. Not every year, like it comes and goes in waves, but for the most part, it's super exciting place to throw. And the conditions aren't always fantastic. No one cares, because you still have to be on your game to throw far. Like, you don't want to go there underprepared, because you'll get your backside handed.
Exactly. And it's an important meet for the Germans for their qualification process, so you know they're going to be in shape. So any international athlete needs to be at the top of their game.
Absolutely, they're ready to take skulls there.
But they also appreciate it. They appreciate it when somebody comes in and puts on a good show. I was there with Lawrence Okoye when he broke the British record, and the crowd was going crazy for him, as much as they were for Robert Harradine throwing his first 70-metre throw. It was, you know, about just being a good competition.
Absolutely. And then afterwards, like, it's years of tradition also, and people understand what throwing is. Like, these guys, people, men and women, kids, they know what discus throwing, and they know what shot. They've got names to relate to, stars to follow. They come up to you after the meet, they know everything about you. That's what I find is fantastic. And then you have the chance to go to like the gala evening, which I've sung a couple times at. But you get to be around. No one's like out of touch or out of. You know, everyone's a human being. As I say, just another bear bum in the shower. And you're able to talk to your idols.
Right, exactly.
So cool.
And you're coming to the twilight of your career. You know, you've done 3 Olympics. Maybe there's a 4th Olympics in your sights. But the great thing is you have a Commonwealth Games coming up in just about 18 months, and it's a home Commonwealth Games for you on the Gold Coast. How important is that for your psyche and focus and something to do? You know?
Absolutely. This is. I was saying just to Dad yesterday. You know, we're having a little bit of a struggle with my elbow and training, and we finished the session on. I want to finish my career on my terms, and I started my career in Melbourne, Australia, at Commonwealth Games, and I would like to hang up my boots in Australia at another Commonwealth Games. Do my best, have that as my sole purpose, to go out like that. I can walk off the arena, tip my hat and say thanks very much. This has been an amazing experience, and I've loved it. I don't want to be one of those people who sort of had to try and didn't quite get there because my body was this or that. That's pretty much my 100% focus anyways. Commonwealth Games, and then I'll be a happy man.
And the throws in the Commonwealth Games used to be kind of a soft touch back in my day. You know, I can remember sort of, you know, throwing in the discus even at the Commonwealth Games level with pretty mediocre marks. But now there's some pretty good competition there from the South Africans, the Jamaicans. You know, some of the home countries are coming through. So, and of course in the shot put you got the New Zealanders there. It's a pretty exciting competition.
Great, fantastic for us, and that's what we want. You know, we don't want to go there and win easily. We don't want to go there and and try less hard, or it have, you know, that it's just a friendly games type of title. You know, you're going to need to throw 66, 67 metres to get a medal there.
Right.
And that's equivalent to Worlds or Olympics.
Yeah.
And it's never been like that. Not that I can remember. What did I win? 2010 with nearly 66.
Right.
And then Discus was strong also, 64. And then it's just kept on going.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah. And you've been at the vanguard from the Australian throws point of view. You've had a couple of talents come through lately. We're hoping that, you know, Matt Denny is one of them, threw really well last year.
Yeah.
And Julian Ruck showed great promise, disappeared a little bit, but we're hoping he's going to come back into things because they're both really talented guys. And following on from you, what do you see for them in their future?
I see. I mean, we got Matt, we got Julian. We've got Mitch Cooper, who's over here at Kansas State University, who's throwing well also, up around 61. So there's potentially 4 or 5 guys that are vouching for a spot. So, I mean, just to make the team in Australia is going to be tricky. But that's fantastic for us in the sport, you know, like to be able to retire from a sport and know that there's, you know, someone's going to smash the records that you set is a great feeling to have. Because hopefully, I don't know if I can say that I have impacted, but I'd like to say that I've pushed the level and, you know, given someone or some people.
Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's great for Australia to continue that development and you know, it's like I said, watching the VHSs of Juergen, I might not have ever continued. Yeah. But having that in your own backyard, I think strives people to, I can knock this person off. Yeah. But for me, I didn't really have that. I had Peter Elvey was there, and we had a couple, but he retired soon after I started getting rolling, and then of course Scott. And, but it wasn't deep, and now it's starting to get a little bit deep. But then we have some really good guys coming up in the hammer. Obviously Matt throws hammer as well. But Jack Dalton, he's doing well. He threw 68 metres at our nationals. So I think he can throw 71 metres.
Damien doing well in the shot.
Damien doing well in the shot. Danny in the discus. We just need a little bit more depth and starting to spread throughout the throws.
Well, I'm sure that they feel a great obligation to you to try and keep that going. You certainly set the pace. And
I forgot also javelin. The girls and the guys javelin at the moment is
very
pretty strong
for some time.
I think I might get some flack if I didn't mention those guys.
All right, Ben, thank you very much for your time here today, and I wish you luck, particularly towards that Commonwealth Games, because I know that means a lot.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.
Awesome.